Disneyland, a place of joy, laughter and dreams. That's what I thought too, until that day. You know, when I was a kid, Disneyland was the stuff of my wildest dreams. I remember my first trip there like it was yesterday. It was a family vacation, a big deal for a small-town kid like me. The excitement was bubbling in my chest like a soda pop ready to explode. The park was a vivid splash of colours, a symphony of laughter and cheer, and an endless parade of beloved characters. It was like stepping into a different world, a world where magic was real and dreams came true. As the day progressed, we explored the park, and I was lost in a whirlwind of joy and wonder. The rides, the shows, the characters, it was all so surreal. The air was thick with the scent of cotton candy and popcorn, and the sound of gleeful screams from the roller coasters echoed around the park. It was like being in a dream, a beautiful, vibrant dream. But as the sun began to set, things took a strange turn. It started with subtle things you wouldn't notice unless you were looking for them. The lights seemed to flicker just a tad too much. The laughter and music faded into the background, replaced by an eerie silence that seemed to swallow up the entire park. The characters, once full of life and energy, now seemed off. It was as if the magic of Disneyland was slowly being drained away, replaced by an unsettling sense of unease. As the hours ticked by, this sense of unease grew stronger, gnawing at the back of my mind. The park was no longer the magical wonderland I had imagined. It had transformed into something else entirely, something dark and foreboding. Little did I know, the happiest place on earth was about to become my worst nightmare. It was around dusk when I first spotted him, a character I'd never seen before in any Disney movies. He was tall, towering over the crowd like a lighthouse in a sea of people. But what struck me most was his attire. It was an old-fashioned Disney costume, like something out of the early days of the park, yet I couldn't place him in any of the classic films. He stood alone, away from the throngs of excited kids and tired parents. His posture was stiff, almost mannequin-like, and he didn't seem to interact with anyone. He just stood there, watching, silent and unblinking. It was odd, sure, but this was Disneyland. Odd was part of the package, right? Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was just off. The way he didn't move, the way he didn't blink. It was as if he wasn't a part of the world around him. He was a still image in a bustling scene, a silent figure in a symphony of laughter and chatter. I found myself drawn to him. Curiosity piqued. I moved closer, trying to get a better look. His costume was incredibly detailed, worn and weathered as if it had seen many a day in the park. Yet his face was hidden under a wide-brimmed hat, leaving only a hint of a smile visible. As the night fell, our paths crossed again. This time the encounter was far from enchanting. It was a part of Disneyland I hadn't really noticed before, tucked away from the usual hustle and bustle. The lights seemed dimmer, the air cooler. It was quieter too, like a hushed whisper against the roar of laughter and fun elsewhere. Suddenly, in the dim glow of a solitary lamplight, I saw him. The same character from before, the one that had intrigued me earlier, but now his presence filled me with unease. He stood there motionless, almost like a statue, his gaze fixed on something unseen. His costume, which had seemed so colourful and lively during the day, now seemed faded and dull in the eerie light. As I approached, he turned to look at me, his eyes hidden behind the mask of the character. I could feel a shiver run down my spine. There was something not quite right about the way he was looking at me, something unsettling. A sense of dread washed over me, and for a moment I was paralysed. I tried to brush it off, telling myself it was just part of the act. But something deep inside me was screaming that this was different. I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck standing up, a primal instinct warning me of danger. Then, without warning, he reached out towards me, his gloved hand extending in the dim light. I stumbled backwards, my heart pounding in my chest. His hand hung in the air for a moment, then fell back to his side. He stood there for a moment longer, his gaze still fixed on me, before slowly turning and disappearing into the shadows. I tried to shake off the fear, but the memory of his haunting gaze was etched in my mind. I couldn't help but wonder what was behind that mask. What was the true nature of this unsettling character? But one thing was certain. I would never forget this chilling encounter in the happiest place on earth. The rest of the night was a blur. All I could think of was the character and his eerie demeanor. The joyous laughter and the twinkling lights of the happiest place on earth faded into the background. My heart pounded in my chest like a drum, each beat echoing the steps of the character that seemed to be everywhere. The once familiar characters and thrilling rides were now just shadows, shrouded by the creeping dread that gripped me. I could see him, the character, in every corner of my eye. He was there, lurking behind the cotton candy stand, peering from behind the castle, and even amongst the cheerful crowd watching the parade. His presence was like a chill that froze the warm summer night. His gaze, though hidden behind that costume, was as piercing as the cold wind that sends shivers down your spine. I could hardly breathe. The joyous music and laughter around me sounded distant and distorted, like I was underwater. The lights seemed too bright, the colors too vivid. My senses were on overdrive, each noise, each movement amplifying my fear. I decided to leave. I couldn't take it anymore. The happiest place on earth had turned into a living nightmare. I walked briskly towards the exit, trying to appear calm. But the character was there at the corner of my vision, watching me leave. I could feel his gaze follow me, like a predator stalking its prey. Back at the hotel, I thought I was safe. How wrong I was. The night was still young when I spotted him, the same character I'd seen at Disneyland right outside my hotel window. His eerie silhouette was unmistakable even in the dim light. The sight of him sent a shiver down my spine, and my heart pounded like a drum against my chest. The chill of fear was more biting than the icy air conditioning in the room. I scrambled for my phone, my hands shaking, my mind racing. I dialed the hotel staff, stuttering as I tried to explain what I was seeing. Their response was swift, but incredulous. They assured me they'd check it out, but I could hear the skepticism in their voices. While I waited, I watched the character from my window, a cold dread creeping up on me. His presence was static, unmoving, a haunting figure that seemed to be watching me. The wait felt like an eternity, every tick of the clock echoing my escalating fear. In desperation, I dialed the police. I stumbled over my words, trying to make them understand the gravity of the situation. They promised to send a patrol car to investigate, but I could tell they were as skeptical as the hotel staff. When the hotel security finally arrived, they found nothing. No trace of the character, no signs of anyone lurking around. They suggested it was a trick of the light or a figment of my imagination. I tried to argue, but their dismissive attitudes were evident.